Welcome to the She's a 10 times 5 show with hosts Lori Jabbar and Michelle Emick. We're bringing public figures, subject matter experts, and other accomplished guests to the Studio 50 table to serve you up the best tips, tricks, and key takeaways that all us midlifers want to know about. Okay, time to join us for some times 5 fun. Let's go. This week's guest is Brooke Baldwin. Brooke is an American journalist, television host, and author who was at CNN from 2008 until 2021 and hosted CNN Newsroom with Brooke Baldwin. In her book, Huddle, How Women Unlock Their Collective Power, Brooke explores the phenomenon of women huddling in politics, Hollywood, activism, the arts, sports, and everyday friendships in order to make change, solve problems, and to inspire, amplify, and support one another. In this episode, we're going to get real with discussing how women can better lock arms and take things to the next level, and how important it is to be vulnerable, communicative, and really express support for one another. Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome to She's a 10 times 5. I am Lori, and I have my co-host Michelle here with me. Hey, Michelle.
Hey, Lori. Glad to be here.
I'm glad to be here, too. All right. This is a great topic, and you know one that is right in my wheelhouse. We are bringing to the table Brooke Baldwin, former anchor for CNN, and she has written an incredible book called Huddle, all around the premise of how us women can be better off by locking arms, engaging, leaning in, aka huddling.
Yes. I mean, this is right up our alley because this is everything that we put out in the world. It's the importance of women coming together and supporting each other and listening and learning and all of that.
Yes. And, you know, Brooke's an interesting character because I think she's coming from a lens in her past where she had to always be on and in front of the camera. And, you know, so I'll be really kind of dialed in to hear what her perspective is living that life. And now, you know, really truly embracing being vulnerable and open and honest with her other women colleagues and friends. So this will be great.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, let's go. Okay, welcome, Brooke.
Thank you so much, ladies. Thanks for huddling with me today.
This is the perfect trifecta of a huddle right here.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Brooke, before we hit record, we chatted a little bit, and I am super excited to have you in the virtual studio because one of the things that I mentioned is I kind of was in the good old boys system for a while, and I and others would think that we would lock arms as women. Yeah. And we actually did the exact opposite. We kind of were our own worst enemies. So I'm really excited about you coming here and talking about, you know, kind of the framework for your book and why you did it. And then give us the 5 takeaways on how we as women can collaborate at a much more effective level.
No, I appreciate you saying that. Like, let's just like rip the Band-Aid, like rip it off at the top of the conversation, because, you know, as you were talking before we hit record about your time at West Point and certainly coming up in, you know, in a male dominated industry as TV news, like, you know, I was like bright eyed and bushy tailed and thought for sure the women would have my back, sister. And, you know, we've all experienced when women can be the worst. They can absolutely be the worst. My word is like, not everyone is huddle-tastic, and we have to recognize that and like, don't force it. But for the sake of my book and this conversation, like, I just want to lean into the ethos of, you know, a rising tide lifts all ships. That is how I live my life day to day. And I can tell you gals do too.
Yeah. I mean, Ask Us Beauty Magazine and She's a 10, both platforms. I mean, it's kind of our way of, you know, rewriting the script, right? Where we are locking arms. And, you know, I always talk about the concept of sisterhood. It's a little bit overplayed, but really that's what we need to do. And when we do it, God, magical things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find, I swear I'm not going to become the interviewer because that's what I did for 20 years, but
do it.
Do you find that because maybe you didn't have those strong female mentors or those relationships or those women to huddle with, that you go out of your way? Because I know this is my case, you know, I go out of my way to, you know, throw down my ladders to women who are coming up, just to help them out, you know, when they ask.
I would say absolutely, because we have experienced it, and so we know. So I think even we want to put our hand out as much as possible, and I know that that's something that I try to do through the magazine and through the podcast, the show that we've been doing that as well. We've got some different younger guests that have come on and want to give them a chance to share what's important to them as women.
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, hard yes on that, because I mean, especially with younger women, that I feel like, you know, now's our chance to, you know, the cement's not dry yet.
Right.
So we can kind of really help shape, you know, their lens. But, you know, a lot of women, especially, you know, I'm a 10 times 5 plus 4, right? So a lot of us are looking to reinvent and really need.
Yeah.
You gotta. That's called, if you have kids, that's called new math. But we're looking to reinvent. Like, some of us has stepped back from the workforce or have left the workforce because we're sick and tired of what we were doing, and we're looking to do something new. And I think when you're in that kind of realm of things, you really need to be able to lean on other women to get you there.
Plus, we can just learn I love these younger women. I just got on there's so much we can learn from these 20-somethings, even, you know, teenagers. I've gotten to know she's on the precipice of 16, like so much just about, you know, we talk so much about the mentor-mentee relationship, but, you know, it can go both ways. Like, we can be sort of reverse mentored by these younger people, which just for me, like, keeps me fresh and keeps me on my toes. And that is a different way we can huddle.
Yeah, absolutely. I had interviewed Nia Dennis, who is a retired gymnast, and we usually are women kind of 40 and up, but sometimes we have younger women on. I was obsessed with my interview with her that I'm like, you have to stay on, become a contributor, because she was so vocal about being an elite gymnast and then the mental health behind it and the importance of, and I was just blown away. She made this one statement that always stuck with me. She's like, nobody's listening. And I got like goosebumps because I was like, she's so right. She's like, everything is so transactional between parents. And she's like, I love my mom and dad, but everything is so transactional. And I just thought, we need to lean into this. This is the good stuff right here, because they're telling us, you know, they're telling us exactly what we need to know.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, not to pull the pin out of the grenade and throw it in the room.
Let's do it.
I mean, I've had conversations with a lot of women, and at all ages. And I think there's some societal things going on that I think women more than ever are trying to use their voice and ask the right questions. And, you know, we've worked really hard to have a seat at the metaphorical table, some of us. And I think we don't want that to become nebulous. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, it was a huge reason why I wrote the book, period. You know, in my 20 years in journalism, in TV journalism, I had never seen women come together and speaking up. At the time, you know, it was 2016, if we can rewind the clock for a second and remember back to that presidential election. And as one of the anchors at CNN, you know, I was crisscrossing the country and interviewing everyone, like from, you know, Trump supporters. I was literally riding Harley Davidson motorcycles with these guys, to, you know, the millennials who all wanted Bernie Sanders to win, to women, young, old, and everything in between, who wanted the glass ceiling to be shattered with Hillary Clinton winning. And I just remember thinking like, I hadn't really ever seen women in my 20 years speaking up the way they did. And then cut to, you know, January of 2017 after Trump won. And I was like balancing on the back of this flatbed truck covering this, you know, this inauguration, and then, you know, his way to the White House for the very first time, and just sort of thinking as a woman, all right, like, what are the next 4 years going to look like for this country with this person in charge? And then the very next day, it was sort of emotional journalistic whiplash, where I'm in the middle of 500,000 people at the Women's March in Washington. And I know people participated all over the country and really all around the world. And that was when, you know, I had two really big takeaways. Like, I was standing back there, you know, hanging out with share as one does, got to interview her. She was like, Brooke, I've been through 17 presidents. We're going to be okay. But my two takeaways were that number one, women are showing up in ways they were energized. Like, had that election gone differently, I don't know if we would have seen this wave of women using their voices, because that then precipitated Me Too and Time's Up, and just how like the face of Hollywood is changing, and various other industries for the better. And then also number two, I sort of took my reporter hat off, and I was like, would I have had a collective of women who would have shown up, shared a tank of gas, jumped on a plane, stood in the crazy long porta potty lines to like stand for something? Mm-hmm. And the answer was, as I slink down in my seat here, is I didn't. I had so prioritized my career in my 20s and my 30s, and I had amazing singular girlfriends, but I didn't have a huddle. And so that was the beginning of like the planting of the seeds of my journey of, really leaning into this. What is a collective of women? This word huddle I came up with. Obviously, it's been used before, but it's more of a masculine word, and I wanted to flip it on its head and just like honor the women, and in particular Black and brown women. We've been huddling in this country for centuries, and that's part of the reason why. Yes.
Well, let me ask you this, because I feel like we historically have had that huddle, but it typically happens in corners or on walks with your trusted, group. And I think we've gotten a lot better as women to be more open and transparent about what we think and what we want, and, who we're going to kind of collaborate with. Would you agree with that?
I think a couple of things. I think having talked to a Black historian, Black and brown women have, even pre-slavery, when they huddled out of necessity, when their husbands would be sold on the auction block and they'd never see them again. But before slavery, when it's just in Black women's DNA, and you think to 1997 and the Million Women March, which rivaled the numbers of what we saw in Washington in 2017, which people don't talk enough about. To it is in Black women's DNA. For white women, I talked to a Duke professor who told me that actually there'd been a bit of a huddle drought. Like everyone was women, for a time, were burning bras and were revolutionary, and then everyone went to work and found their few seats at the table, and then sort of stopped huddling. Basically, this historian told me in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, up until like a couple of years ago, which PS, I was born in 1979. So that's basically my entire lifetime, which made me think I was less crazy to think that, I was noticing something new happening. Not to say that women haven't been huddling in those decades, but, just historically speaking, and she provided all this data that I included in the book, that, women sort of like took our foot off the gas. And only, and again, I also never want to give any one particular person who might have been elected to the White House all the, credit for bringing women together in this country. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I do think that there is this trend forward, but I still think we have a little bit of a ways to go.
Yeah. I mean, you think about this. I mean, just a little fact. I mean, like, we're one of the only countries that have not had a woman at the helm. I mean, even Pakistan has had a female prime minister. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at Nikki Haley running. Obviously, we've had a woman as a vice president, so progress. But what it could ultimately evolve into for 2024 is to what will they be? Nearly octogenarian or octogenarian men, like white men. I go back and forth between whether this country is truly ready or not. We are seeing like some incremental progress when it comes to women in C-suites. But I love this woman, Reshma Sujani, and she speaks a lot about like paid leave for women and how we're like a third world nation when it comes to, women who are mothers, who are not getting all the support those women need when it comes to the workforce. At least I was reading a piece in the New York Times the other day about how
because of COVID and, flexibility, there are actually more women in the workforce because of the ability to be flexible and maybe do sort of a hybrid work situation. I don't know if you all have been affected by this at all, or you have friends who have, but like, it's crazy. And also, we need the men supporting us, right? When I talk about huddling, I do specifically mean only women, but we need our men to be supporting women huddling. We need men to stop, interrupting women in meetings or hijacking ideas, or we need men to take paternity leave. Like, men take 5 days and everyone's like, oh my God, here's your award for being the best dad ever. And then women are like, oh, can I take the full 3 months? I don't know. And then people at work are like, oh, is she really committed to her job? So we still need more progress.
Yeah. That's a really good point about maternity leave, because I think I know I've had so many friends that have struggled with that particular issue, that have meaningful careers where they're really looking, whether it's in the legal profession or straight up corporate.
Yeah.
But where men are almost applauded when they make that tough choice.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Totally. Have you all experienced that, or have men at the workplace who, you know what I'm saying?
Oh my God. Yes. Hard yes on that. As you were talking, I mean, I left corporate when I found out I was expecting, and I never went back to that environment. And I just think it's a lot to juggle. And just the expectations that we have on us as women, to be everything to everyone. And it's not a fair playing field.
Totally.
Yeah. So in the concept of huddle, one of the things that struck me as very interesting is when young women are together and when you're in a all female learning environment. And I was thinking a lot about that. So, I live in San Diego, and locally we have, it's a very prominent school it's all girls. It's a high school. And, I kind of went underneath the hood here just to kind of see, and come to find out they have the highest test scores. Their matriculation to top tier colleges is county leading. Tell us a little bit more about that, because I thought that was a very interesting kind of way to take things on.
Well, one of the bits of access I got from my book, which is what you're referring to, not just all girls schools, but also I got access to Reese Witherspoon's production company, Hello Sunshine, and so Hello Sunshine, along with AT&T, every summer put on this organization where they choose, a diverse group of girls who all come together in Los Angeles and get to meet just the coolest people in the industry. And at the very end, it culminates by them shooting like a mini film. And there was a moment when there was this one girl, Reese was in the room, and for anyone to be in the room with Reese, she's a powerhouse, and it's like, it can be intimidating. And especially if you're like a 14-year-old girl, from smaller town America with big dreams. Mm-hmm. And she got teary. She was overwhelmed and she got teary. And what I loved was that no one made her feel awkward or rushed her. They gave her the space. She was surrounded by all these girls. She had a minute. She composed herself and she continued on. I think if I remember, this was a couple of years ago, but she was like directing the scene where Reese was in this film. And so the point being, I think, in talking to a number of, mega A-player women who went to all girls schools also, and I did not, but I also loved, I was a nerd. I loved sitting in the front row of most of my classes, not economics. And, but there is that intimidation factor of speaking up and raising your hand if it's a mixed gender, academic setting. And what I learned from a lot of these women is, through sitting with a lot of other girls in these schools and in these classes, it's like total confidence and speaking up and raising your hand, so that by the time, you move on to college, if you choose not to go to an all girls school, but if it's co-ed, and then you move on to if it's a corporate environment, you have that ingrained in you. You're not intimidated to just speak up and out and almost be like ostentatious about your brain. That's what I got from a lot of these women who took that path.
Wow. I believe that, because I do feel like, we still get rather intimidated in the mixed company environment. Because, you know, we still have so many stereotypes. We still have legacy kind of thoughts about things. So I just thought that was fascinating. And you know, I love that part because I was like, wow, you know, I hadn't thought about it like this.
Yeah, it can be performative, you know, when you're in a mixed gender setting, instead of like a genuine thirst for knowledge. It's like more about how you present and that performance in front of the boy or the girl versus just a genuine, and this is not for everyone, you know, this is not a across the board blanket statement, but just based on a lot of women I talk to, you know, there is a difference.
What was the most surprising thing when you went on this journey to write Huddle that really kind of made you go, wow, I did not see that coming in my investigation?
Well, it was sort of two-pronged. One, it was this slow, very personal reckoning that I had not prioritized my friendships. You know, when I started in TV news and worked in local news in small town America in my 20s, I was super lonely. I did not have a huddle. You know, when I think of like young Brooke, I played sports. I was super involved. I was like the president of my class, like more times than you're really like allowed to run. You know, I loved leading and being in the throes of girls. But when I jumped into my working life, I stopped prioritizing that. And I see how, you know, that loneliness was detrimental to me. And realizing now that we are better together as women, and sitting in the spaces of, you know, Stacey Abrams and Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird and these badass congresswomen on the Hill and these 19 Black women judges in Texas and Reese and Sarah Hardin, her Hello Sunshine CEO, and women teachers, and I could go on and on, just like sharing oxygen with them, I started walking differently. I started showing up in my friendships differently. I now have like text chains with women. I am now the person who puts people, I'm probably like, people are like, oh, here Brooke goes again, like putting another text chain together, you know, but it huddling has changed my life. So that's it, number one. And number two, women do not like to ask for help. And I think with a lot of these women who are really good at huddling, you have to show up and be vulnerable and be willing to ask for help. We don't know everything. And we're oftentimes wearing a bajillion hats, parents, working women, leaders in our communities, involved in, you know, social service, all the things. And it's not that we're too proud. A lot of times we just don't want to burden our friends. We don't want to burden the other woman. And what I've learned from these huddle-tastic, incredibly successful women is that they always ask for help, and it's given. And that also changed my life.
Wow.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, you know, I can relate so much to that. I mean, really the impetus for, you know, me going down the path of She's a 10 times 5 was, you know, we had a group that through the pandemic, it was about 13 of us, you know, we started off as a fireside chatters and then, you know, got salty. So somehow we ended up as a salty fireside chatter and now we're the salties. But it was a virtual oasis for a group of women that has raised kids in some situations together to really have the rough moments and the tough days. Yeah. Share light information, jokes, etc. And it was a life changer for me. I mean, it was a game changer for me to see this group of women and how we really could elevate each other and support each other. But I think the key thing that you said is you have to be willing to show up and you have to be vulnerable when you need to be, is really the glue to make a huddle work.
Yeah. A follow-up to that is I'm curious because I had a similar situation huddle with a much smaller group of women during COVID. And I'm wondering, like, because this is an important distinction when people are listening to me. And if you pick up the book Huddle, you know, there's a difference between a huddle and let's say like a girls' wine night, which PS I'm totally here for. But the difference
I'm on my way.
Here for it. But the difference is a huddle, you have real intentionality, and the intention is to not just, you know, pull up a couple of folding chairs, to borrow Shirley Chisholm's line, but like build an entire table just for women, having that intention. And so I'm wondering, when you huddled with these 13 salty women, I'm going to bet that the conversations you had were not surface level, that it really went deep and you all went there. In what you discussed and how I love how you use the word oasis. Is that what it was like for you?
Yeah, I think, well, we thought the world was ending for a period there, right?
So
that helped us be vulnerable real quick.
Nothing like a global pandemic.
Yeah. And I was like a caged tiger. That was not my mojo, being, stuck at home like that. But 100%. And I mean, there would be days where someone would crack a joke in the group, and then there would be someone that would say something very deep and meaningful that would prompt a call.
Yes.
Like, hey, you guys, I'm really struggling with this. My marriage is, I want to kill my husband, or my kids are a nightmare. I had one gal that, she actually lives in kind of the same zip code. And, it was like Jerry Springer every day at her house. So to answer your question, yes, 100%, it became something way more than just let's meet in our lawn chairs for a splash just because.
Yeah. And I've had that. I feel very fortunate because I've had that. My closest girlfriends are my friends from college, going back a lot of years, but we are still as close as ever and share everything. And
that's effort, Michelle. That's effort. That's also the thing. If you read this book, Big Friendship, I talked to these women who do the Call Your Girlfriend podcast, and they wrote an entire book. And part of it was like, at one point, I'm not saying I've never done this, but I so respect them for they went to therapy over their relationship. These two women, they're like, and I agree, you have to put in the work to maintain a huddle like you do nearly like your marriage. Like
we've had ups and downs, but we are like, we're family, and we're never letting go. And so we work through whatever issues are, but we're very open. And it's just something I feel so honored to have. It's just love that. Years.
Well, let me ask this. I'm going to lobby up a cookie here, see what you do with it. So I've been on what I've called an honesty crusade for probably 3 years now. And I don't mean that, I lived a life of dishonesty and white lies, but I felt like I wasn't being pure in my feelings and communicating certain things with the people that mattered in my life. And what resulted from that was, me feeling not good, walking away, me not being authentic at times and putting on a smiley face and not addressing stuff, or, me becoming passive aggressive.
Yeah.
What do you talk about the honesty part? Because I think we underplay that. And when you're in relationships, you have to be able to speak your truth, correct?
I mean, I think that's different for everyone, but I would say preach, I mean, this, as I'm listening to you talk, I think of, the legendary Brené Brown, and she talks about, all the armor that we wear. My God, like, just to do my job with the subject matter, like, I definitely wore armor. I mean, I was more human maybe than others, and got written up for crying on TV a few times, but when it comes to showing for me, let me just answer for my own self. And I read this book last year, which has become my Bible, by Martha Beck, called The Way of Integrity. And she talks about going on, it's something like an integrity. It's not a cleanse, but it's, she essentially counts, from 0 to however many days of, not telling a lie, not even like a teeny weeny, oh, I can't make it. My kid's sick, like nothing. And I really have taken that on in my own life. And I just don't lie. I think I had told like a teeny white lie the other day, and it had been a few months, and I was like, damn it, back to 0. But for me, integrity is way, way up there for my own self and how I show up in the world, how I show up in my work, how I show up in my relationships with my family, with my friends. It's not always pleasant. People don't always want to hear the truth. And at the same time, I'm not like, what was the movie where the person like can't tell a lie at all, and you're just like, you're fat, you're ugly, like, there's a fine line. But if I can't be my full freaking authentic self with myself, why would you want to huddle with me? Why would you want to be friend? it's like I could go on and on and on about that. And back to my best friend in my head, Brene. She talks about, there's this amazing, it's in her book, The Gifts of Imperfection. And she talks about a midlife unraveling. And by the way, she defines midlife like 30s and on. And essentially, I'm about to curse, forgive me, listeners. But I'm quoting Brene Brown, where she's like, it's when the universe sort of like lightly taps you on the shoulder and says, what the fuck have you been doing? Why are you wearing all this armor? Why are you not having these courageous conversations? Why are you not making these changes in your life? Why are you not being in integrity with yourself? Like, it's exhausting. You're exhausted. It's time to change. And when I read that, I just like, it so moved me. I remember exactly where I was in this Adirondack chair on a river that I wrote that whole definition of a midlife unraveling in my iPhone notes section. You would totally, if anyone ever read my iPhone notes section, oh my gosh. And, and those are words I really try to live by. It's freaking hard. I don't know about y'all. It's freaking hard, but that is like how I sleep at night.
Yeah.
Do you think it's hard? Do you think it's been harder because of the profession you're in?
Actually, I think when I grew up, my mom always told me I should be a judge. And then I did something, seemingly tangential, which is become a journalist. I've always been very fair and very truthful. And one of the biggest compliments, I met someone the other night and they were like, oh my God, last night, I loved watching you. You're so trustworthy. And that's one of the biggest compliments anyone can ever give me. And so I think in journalism, at least the journalism, that I walked into when I graduated UNC Chapel Hill in 2001 was like telling the truth and like, real facts. We could go on a whole
I'd love to go there.
Whole side conversation around the state of news today. But because of what I did and how much it mattered to me and how much respect I had for the viewer, telling the truth was paramount.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know. And it's when you really start to self-evaluate that honesty equation, you'll surprise yourself with how dishonest you can be. And sometimes I find myself like something's really bothering me. It could be with my husband even, or a really, really close friend of mine. And I am not being honest about how it's affecting me. And I've really learned to pivot on that notion and, be self-aware and then communicate it. Because I think when you do, and you're able to do it in a proactive way versus a reactionary form, it really strengthens your relationships.
It totally does. You're doing yourself a total disservice if you're not being honest with those people, and then you're not having a fully honest relationship with those people. And do they entirely know you, or do you know them? And, I agree.
Oh man, I'm loving this. We can go on for 5 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. So Brooke, this has been amazing, by the way. And I so thank you for all of this. But if you want to leave the audience with something, the one takeaway that you say, if you do nothing else, this is the moneymaker, what would that be?
When it comes to huddling, or like how I live my life, or what?
Either or. Huddling, but I think we've kind of been on that, Yeah.
Gosh, when it comes to living my life, we hit on this, but it's like, and it's taken me 43 years and I'm still so on this journey of coming home to myself. But it's getting quiet with myself. For me, that's become like, it involves a meditation practice. You don't even have to get all woo-woo into understanding what that does to your body, but like it does something to your nervous system. And so to become clear, taking those deep breaths, whatever it is, whether you're in a tough yoga pose or you're waking up first thing in the morning and you want to reach for your phone, or you're about to have like a really tough conversation with someone, just freaking breathe. I would say that. And I would say, just like, we all need to be better at listening. I feel like it's become this dying art because we're living in our phones all the time, myself included. I can feel myself like getting agita when I'm, feeling like I've got to check Instagram, got to check want to check all these apps. And I think if we can just like really remember to focus on someone, stop interrupting them, eye contact, honoring them, listening to them, letting the silence breathe in a conversation, not jumping right in. Sometimes like the best stuff comes after the quiet. That's what I would say.
All right.
I
Mic
love
drop time.
Boof.
There we go.
You know, not to take this down the rabbit hole, but I love that you said the quiet, because things have kind of, you know, the one silver lining from the pandemic was the quiet. When you go out walking and there wasn't, you know, the hubbub going on.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are really uncomfortable with the quiet. I used to say this when I was in business, when I was in the, you know, the corporate world. I would always tell people that one of the most effective techniques to do in a meeting, because I was on the sales side, was to listen and then let it be quiet.
Yeah.
And just watch people. Like, it's really kind of unnerving. People really start to squirm, you know?
Same in an interview, a live interview or a taped interview, exact same thing. I tell all these young reporters who want to meet me or talk to me, I'm like, don't fill the silence. And I loved the silence from the pandemic. But my point about breathing is, like, you can create the silence within. We all live in these crazy worlds. I'm here in New York City. My God, the city is loud. It is so loud all the time, everywhere. But, you know, when you can find, we learned how much we appreciated the quiet when it was forced upon. I learned how much I appreciated the quiet when it was forced on me in the pandemic, when we thought the world was totally melting away. That was a huge takeaway for me. And you can replicate some of that quiet by going within.
Yeah. All right, Michelle.
Yeah.
Time to be quiet.
I am. Well, that's hard for me to do, but I am.
It's hard for all of us.
Yeah.
It's a practice. Yeah.
No, it is a practice, but I agree. And it is important to sit back and listen. And I was just thinking too, I interviewed Maria Shriver, who's on the front cover, and she was just talking about the importance of being present. And my life was she's like, I had no idea. My 20s, 30s, first, everything was like, I want to win an Emmy and the Anchor and I want a Peabody. Everything was a to-do list. And she's like, it isn't until now, later in life, that I realized the importance of being quiet and listening and enjoying
the same thing.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Our issue is about better with age, but it was like, it took us those breaks, because those early years, we were all climbing the ladder and grinding, and like, it was just like, forget even listening. We were just like laser focused.
Yes. And there's time for that. We had to do that, right? We had to do that to get through the thing, to get to the next thing, to jump over the thing.
Yeah. We would have never gotten as far in our careers, I think, if we hadn't done that. But we can now pass that down to others with this wisdom that we have to say, hey, listen, over the years, this is what we've learned. And if we could not rewrite it, but give other people some knowledge and pass that down.
Yeah. You all are doing exactly that. Thank you for you.
Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny because, I've got a college graduate now, just this past spring, and he's doing exactly what we're saying we wish we hadn't have done. He's grinding and, going at a frenetic pace, I'll tell you. And yeah.
But he'll do it, he's got to do it. And
you got to learn on your own too. I mean, we can give advice and recommendations and all that, but life is about it is one big lesson.
Yeah. As long as he has an outlet, something like a passion, a hobby, something to diffuse all the intensity of the working.
Yeah. All right. I think we did pretty well, this trifecta huddle.
Thanks, ladies, so much. I'll tell Josie I did this today, and I'll tell her y'all say hey.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, Brooke. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Have wonderful weeks, ladies. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Nice to meet you too. All right. Thank you for our audience as well. Okay.
Bye.
Bye, guys.